see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. I see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. I see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. I see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. I see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. I see it there, she smiles at me. Messy hair and muddy feet. We're at a crossroads, just you and me. Do we rust away in comfort, or can we choose our destiny? What do you want? What does it mean to be free? Can we call this a life if we're not living with the things that we need? Get up, get out, this is not the end. Hit the ground running and learn to love again. We know these roads like the back of our hands. Time to ditch the pavement, man, find a new place to stand. I can see it in your eyes, I know your heart is true. But you can see the fear in these eyes looking back at you. You don't trust the ground, you trust your feet. That's why we walk by faith, not by sight in these darkening streets. Get out, this is not the end. Hit the ground running and learn to love again.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Roxy from the Bank of Prairie du Sac, and on behalf of the entire staff of the Bank of Prairie, we welcome you to our Economic Outlook event today. No snow, it's a good thing, so we're able to get by this year without snow so far. We are going to change up our meeting a little bit today. We're going to start with a presentation from our administrators, the village administrators and area administrators, and then Dr. Deller will follow up after that. But first, we will have a drawing for a door prize. So I think everyone was able to put their name in. Tawana, would you like to do the honors? In case anyone has to leave early, we can make sure that we are in the drawing. Tiffany Bumgart. All right, I saw Tiffany, there she is. Good, okay. And now I'll turn it over to Tawana and she'll get the program started.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Tawana German, the Executive Director with the Sauk Prairie Chamber of Commerce, and we are pleased to partner year after year with the Bank of Prairie du Sac on so many community projects, but specifically this event. As we all get busy in life and go about our day-to-day obligations, it's easy to not reflect and appreciate all of the things that are happening in our community. So our administrators and Superintendent Jeff Wright, who couldn't be here today, he's at the State Superintendent Conference, We all collaborate each year to take a moment to reflect and create a report that we bring to you through this event each year. So I'm excited for you to see that. We also have other partners that make this event possible. That is Nick Dingman with River Arts Center, their director here. Thank you, Nick, for your help. And Mark Fry, who year after year comes and videos and live streams this event for those that can't be with us. So thank you, Mark, for doing that as well. In real estate, they always say location, location, location. It's a catchphrase. But for a long time, low income, inner city, and rural communities have been seen as one of the least desirable places to do business. The typical situation for a rural community was disinvestment. Taxes, bank deposits, business profits, and sales flowed out of the community, but did not flow back in the form of jobs, investments, infrastructure, or even basic public services. Communities responded by fostering reinvestment, and here in Sauk Prairie, I can assure you that our community leaders, including our business partners, are committed to investing even during difficult times. Rural population is increasing for the first time since World War II. People are rediscovering the value and benefit of small town quality. Community leaders, the chamber, school administrators, and community organizers have come together to think creatively and to continue the transformation that we have seen here in Sauk Prairie. Building on assets gives community organizers insight into the power of community and stakeholder interest. It also gives community developers negotiating power and accountability for outcomes that are appropriate and just. Building on assets gives community builders a framework for mapping relationships and finding new opportunities. Transformative thinking and planning occur when we see opportunity hidden in the context of community threats. Every community has 5 assets: individual talents and skills, local association and institutions, land and property, and economic strength. Connecting these assets is the core activity that allows a community to organize, develop, and to continue building itself from within. In changing times and complex situations such as now, I report to you that the Sauk Prairie leadership is committed to continuing investments and transformative change. Together, we can overcome obstacles such as global pandemics, rising interest rates, supply chain issues, worker shortage, and much more. Threats are opportunities for us to grow, to think differently, to take chances, and to continue to try new things that set Sauk Prairie apart from other communities. Over the last year, much of our planning came to fruition with completed projects. Join me and let's take a look.
Find your happy place in the Sauk Prairie Riverway, where adventure comes naturally. Find your happy place in the Sauk Prairie Riverway, where adventure comes naturally.
The Sauk Prairie School District is grateful for the support of the Sauk Prairie community. I'm Jeff Wright, and I'm proud to be the superintendent. We know a high-quality education system is a key building block of a strong community and economy. Recent investments in our facilities and in expanded programs help our schools better support our current students and position Sauk Prairie to be more attractive to prospective families and employers. In 2014, Sauk Prairie approved a $34.6 million referendum to invest in several school buildings, including the building of Bridges Elementary and the expansion of Tower Rock Elementary. The Bridges Elementary campus includes the district office, providing a modern space to welcome new families and staff to our community. In 2020, Sauk Prairie again authorized the borrowing of $65 million to fund improvements to the community outdoor pool, construct a new stadium, and make athletic improvements on the middle school and high school campus, to build a new aquatics facilities with pools for students, teams, and community use, build an addition onto the popular River Arts Center, and completely renovate our high school, which was first opened for the class of 1964. The construction from the 2020 referendum is now 88% complete. The school district is so proud of how the projects have turned out. Our new Eagles Stadium is not only hosting high school and community events, but it has also been selected by the WIAA to host sectional soccer games, sectional track and field events, and neutral site football games. These events bring thousands of people to the Sauk Prairie community. Our new aquatics facility can accommodate community classes, including water aerobics and toddler swimming lessons throughout the day. Our physical education and competition pool stays busy as well and was selected by the WIAA to host sectional competitions for both boys and girls swimming. The inside of the high school has been completely transformed to better meet the needs of modern teaching and learning. This past summer, the commons, kitchen, and library were completely renovated. We recently broke ground on a new greenhouse and Leola Hall, a multi-purpose performance and meeting space being built on the south side of the River Arts Center. Next summer, our advanced manufacturing, metal shop, wood shop, and drafting classrooms will be expanded and renovated. This work is funded in part by a $2.44 million grant from the state of Wisconsin. This grant not only funds these expanded spaces, it is helping the district purchase equipment to prepare our current and future workforce in agricultural science, advanced manufacturing, and medical careers. Our new spaces and equipment will be used by students and community members alike, with our first evening phlebotomy and specimen processing certification courses starting this winter. These new spaces attract visitors to Sauk Prairie. Our schools are better able to serve our students and families, and our new programs are helping us offer courses that match student interests and community needs. The Sauk Prairie School District, together we soar.
Hi, I'm Chief Sherman. On behalf of the Village of Sauk City and Prairie du Sac, we welcome you to the new Sauk Prairie Police Station.
Research shows that communities that invest in public safety increase their capability of sustainability, reduce violent crimes, and reduce property crimes. Hello, I'm Alan Wildman, the Village Administrator of the Village of Prairie du Sac. Too often, communities are equipped with solutions, but not the resources to address public safety needs. I report to you today that here in Sauk Prairie, we continue to increase in our investment in public safety. The goal is to provide safe and reliable equipment for our first responders and better equip them to provide important services to our residents, visitors, and businesses. In addition to the new police station, recent purchases have included a new rescue engine for the Prairie du Sac Fire Department and a new ladder truck for the Sauk Fire District. Future purchases include a new ambulance and a new aerial truck. Recently, an automatic mutual aid agreement was entered into that calls for the fire departments of Prairie du Sac, Sauk, and Merrimack to respond when there is a confirmed structure fire in any of the 3 response areas. Recruitment, much like the business community, continues to challenge our police department and fire districts. The police department has seen applications for openings decrease from as many as 100 for one position down to 10 recently. There has never been a more important time to support collaboration between the business community and first responders. Thank you for allowing your employees to leave work when the pagers go off. They couldn't do it without your support. Collaboration continues as both the Village of Prairie du Sac and Sauk City and the Town of Prairie du Sac are currently working on updates to the Sauk Prairie Comprehensive Plan. We hope to incorporate results and recommendations from the 2021 Affordable Housing Study for the Sauk Prairie area, reviewing and amending the Economic Development chapter to incorporate various economic development reports, studies, and trends, and updates to the future land use and transportation maps. The Town of Prairie du Sac and the Village of Sauk City are reviewing their joint extraterritorial zoning for updates dealing with the Highway 12 and 60 area, ensuring that progress continues slowly and well planned for, but is as business-friendly as possible. Keep completing those chamber surveys. Your feedback is important so that elected leaders know your needs. Speaking of surveys, our work with the Chamber's Economic Development Committee continued in 2022, and child care became a focus area. With affordable, quality child care in communities, it's a sacrifice parents don't have to make. Child care services give parents the flexibility to work, make money, develop their careers, and contribute to the local economy. High-quality child care keeps children safe and healthy. It helps children develop skills they will need for success in school and in their lives outside of school. Child care challenges experienced by centers, families, and providers are defined by a low supply of child care workers, cost inflation for both staff and services, and a persistent shortage of affordable child care options for families. Anyone who has attempted to find or pay for child care in the Sauk Prairie area is no stranger to our area being a child care desert. It is estimated that our area is short as many as 500 child care slots for those under the age of 6 years old. The Chamber, municipalities, Sauk Prairie School District, residents, and businesses such as McFarland's, Milwaukee Valve, Sauk Prairie Healthcare, Bank of Prairie du Sac, and more have partnered to meet this challenge. If your business would like to be part of the solution, please contact your chamber to learn more.
Hi, I'm Heidi Cook, Administrator for the Village of Sauk City. I'm here at the brand new Holiday Inn Express, a new 4-story, 72-room hotel, which is a great addition to our community. The hotel offers party, meeting, and fitness rooms, as well as a concrete patio out back with a fire pit. This project, in addition to our existing lodging facilities, Cedarberry Inn and Skyview Motel, allows us to keep travelers within our community, providing an economic impact to area restaurants, gas stations, and retail. In regard to housing in Sauk City, the 4th and final phase of Cardinal Estates subdivision was approved and the public improvements were completed, creating 57 new single-family lots on the northwest side of the village. In the schoolyard addition, we have only 7 of the 23 lots left that are available for purchase. These 0.2 to 0.3 acre size lots are selling between $52,000 and $58,000. Our neighbors in Prairie du Sac were successful in working with developers on a new mixed residential and commercial use building to be located at 670 Water Street. The development will break ground in spring of this year and will consist of 13 studio efficiency units that will rent for $900 to $1,075 per month, 25 one-bedroom units which will rent for $1,200 to $1,350 per month, and 15 two-bedroom units which will rent for $1,550 to $2,000 per month. The announced rents will include water and sewer, and residents will have access to the building's gym, canoe-kayak storage, and club room with a deck and river views. This project will include 2 underground levels of parking for 52 vehicles, plus motorcycles and bicycles. In addition to underground parking, the developers have secured additional parking spaces in a nearby private lot. Developers continue to reach out, and our need for workforce housing is a topic of conversation with our local business community. We will continue to try and find partners who can assist us in building rental property and entry-level homes for our residents and your workers. If you would like to discuss how you could be a partner on workforce housing, please reach out to me or Alan to better understand the community's need.
The Sauk Prairie community over the last 5+ years have been transformed through donations and investments into our parks, trails, and open spaces. Hi, I'm John Lehan, the Director of Community Education and Recreation for the Sauk Prairie area. Research has shown that the benefits of parks and trails include improving physical and mental health and wellness, creating conservation and resiliency through protections of land, water, trees, and open spaces, increasing property values, improving economic development for the region, and spurring tourism through local park and trail activity. Most critically, parks and recreation amenities are the cornerstones to improving a region's quality of life, a significant factor in enticing employers and workers to an area. When combined with the ability to deliver healthier and happier communities, the powerful impact parks, trails, and recreation has on economic activity highlights the fact that park and recreation agency offerings are not merely a nice-to-have luxury government service. Instead, they transform our towns and our counties into vibrant and prosperous communities for all. In 2015, we completed our first ever comprehensive outdoor recreation plan for the Sauk Prairie area. The plan helped shape the way we vision and plan for our parks and spaces. It stimulated the development of Riverfront Park in Sauk City, with the addition of soccer fields and a splash pad. It called out we were 42 acres short of parkland for a community our size and pinpointed the location of the new Culver Community Park as the best location for our next community park. It established a comprehensive network of off-street trails and loops to establish and connect the Great Sauk State Trail. Speaking of the Great Sauk State Trail, we have established a world-class trail in our region, and the goal now stretches further with the investment of $4 million from Dane and Sauk counties with planned construction of the connecting bridge over the Wisconsin River. By connecting with this bridge, it is expected to be the busiest trail in the state of Wisconsin. An economic impact study by the Outdoor Industry Association shows cycling contributes to $1.4 billion to Wisconsin and provides more than 13,000 jobs. The Great Sauk State Trail has and will continue to be a catalyst for development in the villages and will continue to expand our local economy. In spring of 2023, we are proud to announce that Culver Community Park Phase 1 will open. The Sledding Hill, Dog Park, and Western Trails are now open, but this Phase 1 includes the North Building, with seating inside for 160, 5 multi-purpose fields, which will host games and tournaments, skate park, tennis courts, pickleball courts, fishing pond, multi-use trails, and a north playground. Community members, businesses, and grants have contributed to $10.8 million in donations for this incredible park that will create memories for a lifetime. But our work is not done. We need your help in finishing this park. Phase 2, which will include baseball and softball diamonds, an inclusive dream playground, and sand volleyball courts, still need to be finished. We cannot build these items without the community's support. If you would like to learn more about our work, visit our website and become a partner today.
Hello, Lindsay Giese here, Executive Director of River Arts, Inc. I'm standing on the site of the future Leola Hall, a multi-purpose space designed for meetings, lectures, banquets, performances, and all the other creative endeavors we can dream up. The need for this space was a direct result of the heavy usage of the River Arts Center. During the 18-19 school year, the River Arts Center was used 330 days, with over 160 days of public events, including school musicals, touring performing arts groups presented by River Arts, Inc., plays by the Sauk Prairie Theater Guild, dance recitals, dance competitions, and art openings, but also events like Eagle Days, senior movies, the FFA annual banquet, Dollars for Scholars awards, and more. In fact, on average, 30% of the River Arts Center's use is actually for non-arts related activities. We're also proud that the use is nearly 50-50 split between the community and the school district, which was a goal when the facility first opened in 2000. Of course, the River Arts Center and Leola Hall are just a few of our arts venues. River Arts on Water Gallery in downtown Prairie du Sac features over 40 local artists and hosts nearly 60 annual events, from art classes to live music and more. Several other Sauk Prairie retailers feature art, home decor, and classes as well, such as Retwist Tea, Home by Haley, and Flaxen and Fleece, to name a few. In fact, there is more art in our community than ever before. We've also seen a boom in live music venues in the last few years, including places like Vintage Brewing Company, The Vines, and Village Pub, as well as music in our parks during June Tunes, the Prairie du Sac night markets, and the Cow Chip Festival. Finally, part of the planning for the Great Sauk State Trail included being intentional about adding world-class art to the trail, understanding that public art can invigorate public spaces and help to engage the community on many levels. It can draw people to our community, create a recognizable identity, tell our story, and honor our history. Now let me tell you why these venues and events matter based on research collected by Americans for the Arts. 72% of Americans believe the arts unify our communities regardless of age, race, and ethnicity, and 81% believe the arts are a positive experience in a troubled world. In Dane County alone, the arts annually contributed $10 million to local government and $14 million to state government. Visitors to events spend an additional $19 in the community beyond their admission ticket on items such as gas, meals, souvenirs, babysitters, hotels, and more. This means the River Arts Center events alone likely bring in $500,000 in economic impact into Sauk Prairie each year. I think we can all agree that art improves our quality of life and makes Sauk Prairie a more beautiful place to live and work. But it's important to remember that its presence also boosts our economy and contributes to a future Sauk Prairie that is thriving.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim McCumber. I'm the Sauk County Board Chair. I'm elected to represent the Merrimack area, which is a part of the Sauk Prairie Riverway. And I'm very excited to be standing out here today in front of the county's latest and newest park out in Bluffview. It's a wonderful ad to support this local community and our school district as a whole, and we're very excited about the opportunities it brings for the children out here. We're also very excited to be partnering with Dane County as we build the bridge across the Wisconsin River to the Great Sauk State Trail, a very important asset that we've brought to this county with huge economic development impacts. We're so excited to have this opportunity to grow and expand this trail, potentially someday from Lake Michigan all the way to the Mississippi River. It's already having a great impact on the Sauk Prairie community, as you can already see by the number of people using that trail, and hopefully someday we'll get that project finished. So we think the real keystone to this project is the proposed interpretive center out at the Sauk Prairie Recreation Area. This is a great opportunity for us to collaborate and bring in our partners of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Sauk Prairie Conservation Alliance, the Badger History Group, and so many other people to tell the story of what happened on these lands long before we were here, and the story of what can happen as we move forward into the future. It's been a great opportunity to continue serving this area. We're very much looking forward to the economic opportunities, and we can't wait to work together with all of you on the future of the Sauk Prairie area and Sauk County.
Where adventure comes naturally.
I hope you enjoyed the time just to reflect on all of the things that we have accomplished together, but I can assure you that amenities that you have seen, the impact of arts and recreation within our community, it's only the tip, because we would like to now really turn and focus our interest on that child care shortage and workforce housing for your employees. So I know we asked in the video, but if you have any interest of being a part of that solution, I invite you to contact either of our village administrators or contact me at the chamber. Each year, we are thrilled to also partner with UW and specifically economist Dr. Stephen Deller. He's been a friend to Sauk Prairie. He is a huge resource to me in the work that I do daily. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephen Deller.
Morning. Is this thing? Yeah, this thing is on. Before I get into the presentation, I just want to make a couple observations about the video. I do a lot of work around Wisconsin working with rural communities, and a lot of times they'll ask, well, what are some other places that we can look at to see how they're doing it? And it used to be, well, look at what Cambridge is doing. Okay, look at what Mount Horeb is doing. Look at what Reedsburg is doing. Increasingly, I'm using Sauk Prairie as an example, as a place that maybe you want to look at how they're going about it. And I think the reasons is evident in what you saw in the video. One of the things that's always impressed me about the Sauk Prairie area is the willingness of the communities to come together and work together. There's a municipal boundary that divides Sauk City and Prairie du Sac. I don't think anybody in this room really realizes, well, I'm sure they realize there's a municipal boundary there, but for practical purposes, it doesn't exist. The community comes together, and I think that's extremely important. I think the other thing is that you're willing to tax yourself to make investments in the community. A lot of folks immediately think, particularly in a lot of rural areas, think that taxes are bad. That if you raise taxes, that's going to harm the business climate, and that's going to hinder economic growth. I think that Sauk Prairie is an example where that's evidence that that's not true. Using those tax dollars to invest in things like schools, police and fire protection, parks and recreation, even beautification initiatives to try to take the downtown and make it a little bit more visually pleasing. All those kind of investments in dollars can actually have a positive impact on the community. And a community that's willing to tax itself in order to make those kind of investments is the kind of proactive approach that makes communities dynamic. The third thing is childcare. And I think that this is something that a colleague of mine, Tessa Conroy, some of you may know Tessa, has been doing a lot of work on childcare. And I've been kind of helping her with the current research project. And one of the things that I didn't really realize is when you as I was reading the policy literature related to child care, all of the developed countries, except for the US, child care is early childhood care, infant to kindergarten or first grade, is considered much like a public school. It's a public service, except in the US. In the US, it's a market-based economy. It's individual private businesses. What we're finding is that model doesn't work anymore. What economists would call market failure, okay? The wages that would have to be paid to attract people to work in childcare, the level of revenue that is required to make a private business profitable, the wages or the fees would have to be so high that parents can't afford to pay it. The market collapses. I think as you're looking at childcare, I think you need to start looking at it more through the lens of a public good or a public service, and think kind of outside the box, okay? And so those are just my observations on the video. What's happening to the economy? If we look at what the economic indicators are pointing at, this is kind of the picture that we're getting right now. It's kind of a mess. There are some indicators that are saying we're headed to a recession. There are others that are saying we're doing fine, thank you very much. I was talking to Steve, the president of the bank, before the session, and he's like, around here, we're not seeing any indication. I'm paraphrasing, correct me if I got it wrong. We're not really seeing any indicators of a recession now. If anything, we're firing on all cylinders. Okay, so we need to be careful when we think about what's happening to the future of the economy. And that's what I want to do this morning, because I kind of want to walk you through some of the logic there. Okay? I think part of it is that the headlines, our media has really gotten very sensationalized. It seems as though, what's the old, if it bleeds, it leads? I think we're kind of falling back into the trap of sensationalism. So when you read a lot of the headlines in the newspaper, it's kind of the sky is falling, okay? There's one, that's the one in the blue, that's the Jacksonville, Florida. There's one economist that they interviewed that said, no, the economy's actually doing okay. We're not, so there's one outlier here. But if you read the media, it's the sky is falling. Why is that, okay? So what I want to do is I want to walk through some of the indicators that we're looking at. One of the grandfather measures of economic activity is gross domestic product. And this is a growth index for gross domestic product for the US, Wisconsin, and the Great Lakes states. It goes up to the third quarter of 2022. That's the most current data that we have for the state of Wisconsin, okay? But if you look at this is in nominal terms, and what this means is nominal means we're not taking out the effects of inflation. Okay, so inflation is not being talked about in this at all. Okay, you can see the effects of COVID. You can see the recovery out of COVID. And if you look at this, it's like, geez, GDP is growing quite well, thank you very much. Wisconsin is tracking the Great Lakes, maybe not growing quite as fast as the national economy. That's kind of typical for Wisconsin. But there's no indication of any kind of economic downturn. However, if you take into effect the inflation, if you adjust gross domestic product into what economists call real terms, we're taking out the effect of inflation, we get a very different picture. This is Wisconsin. The dark line is nominal growth, but look at real GDP growth coming out of COVID. We get the recovery back, and then it's kind of flat. We're not seeing growth. The reason is because inflation is eating away at that growth. Think of it this way. You just got a 3% pay raise, but inflation is at 5%. You're coming out behind, okay? So that 3% pay raise that you just got, that's the nominal increase, but you take in the effect of inflation, you're actually worse off. So one of the things that's going to come through here is what is inflation doing to our economy right now? And for Wisconsin, all that perceived growth in gross domestic product is actually being eaten up by inflation. We're not seeing any growth in terms of real. The other way is to look at nominal personal income. Personal income is all sources of income, wages and salaries, dividends, interest, rental income, some transfer payments. If you're earning Social Security payments, that would be included in here. So all sources of income. And again, this is nominal. We're not looking at inflation. This is really kind of odd because there's two spikes there. And what that is that's federal stimulus. Did any of you get one of those federal stimulus checks? That's why there's a spike there. Okay, so that's really kind of odd. So students of economics are going to be looking back at these two spikes years from now, are going to be wondering, what the hell was that? And they'll forget about COVID and things like that. So one of the things is that the federal stimulus, there's two arguments now about the federal stimulus that came out. One is that it kind of softened the blow of the COVID recession. It kind of prevented the economy from falling into a tailspin, okay? But was it too much? Did we step on the gas pedal a little too hard, a little too long, and did that lead to inflation? Okay, that's one of the debates. Both are true, but it's a matter of degree here a little bit, okay? Nominal, if we take out the effects of inflation, you still see the two spikes from the federal stimulus, but look at what's happening to personal income in Wisconsin once you take out the effects of inflation. It's actually declining. This is pointing towards a recession. Okay, this is one of those indicators that is saying something's not right. Inflation is eating away at all the income growth that we've been experiencing. Okay, that 3% raise you got, you're actually 2% in the hole because of 5% inflation. Personal consumption. What's driving inflation right now? One thing is to look at personal consumption. This goes up to 2021. We don't have the 2022 data yet. But you can see that, notice that during the COVID years, personal consumption dropped. People kind of went into lockdown mode, okay? And as they went into lockdown mode, they kind of stopped spending, but yet they were getting stimulus checks, okay? What happened when we came out of lockdown? We went on a spending spree, okay? One of the biggest categories that saw huge increases in here is home furnishings. Why would you think home furnishings was a spike coming out of COVID? Everyone's staying at home and kind of going, yeah?
Setting up your home office too. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But I think people sitting at home and kind of going, you know, this sofa is getting really kind of ratty. I know my wife and I, we bought two new chairs for our TV room. But there was a problem with it, is that there was a 9-month waiting list. Why was there a 9-month waiting list? Well, it turns out my sister is an interior designer, and she is in that particular market. And what it is that when you make furniture, there are certain fibers that are used to make certain elements, and there's one supplier, and that one supplier is in China. And what happened to COVID in China? Lockdown. So they had all these pieces, they had everything ready to make the furniture, but they were missing one vital piece, and it just shut the whole thing down, okay? Bubbles in the supply chain. We're gonna keep coming back to that again and again, okay? What about employment? This is the closest that we've ever come to actually turning off the economy. It was like a light switch. We just flipped it off. And notice the drop in the amount of employment. Also notice how it came back. It came back relatively quickly, okay? Also notice that employment here dropped, for Wisconsin, dropped about 15%. So when we turned off the economy because of COVID, we lost about 15% of our jobs. We didn't shut the economy down 100%. We still had 85% of employment going on, but in a different format. A lot of it was working from home, okay? Notice it came back. Also notice that Wisconsin, in October of 2022, it's actually November, it goes to November. Notice that Wisconsin's level of employment is not back to where it was pre-COVID, okay? Does this mean that we're not generating jobs? No, actually, this is the number of job openings. We're generating a lot of jobs, but we're not able to fill the jobs that we're generating. The labor shortage issue, how many of you are in private business that are having trouble hiring workers? Okay. The reason I think that we have not been able to go back to pre-COVID levels in terms of employment is because we don't have the people to fill those jobs. Now, why don't we have people to fill those jobs? Okay, could take all morning talking about. Some of it's childcare. A lot of folks have just said, I'm out of the labor force because of childcare issues. Some folks are rethinking work-life balance. Okay, there's lots of things that are going on here, but it's not because we're not generating jobs, it's because we don't have the people to fill the jobs. Okay, what about the unemployment rate? Again, a couple of things here. Notice that Wisconsin is always below the national average. Wisconsin people want to work. You can see the spike in unemployment. You can see the unemployment rate coming right back down again. Notice there are two things here. One is, we've talked about this before, about kind of what is a natural rate of unemployment. There's always churn in the economy. There are always businesses opening, businesses closing, businesses expanding, businesses contracting. There's always churn in the economy, which means there will always be some people that are unemployed. And economists argue, well, what's the natural rate of unemployment? How much should a reasonable rate of unemployment be? Some say 4%, some say 3.5%, but when you start to get below 3.5%, you're really getting into a very tight labor market, okay? And I haven't looked at the numbers for the Sauk Prairie, but I know that Dane County, Madison, is averaging about 2.5%. Madison is always in a very tight labor market, okay? So it's not as though we have a lot of people that are out there looking for work. That's not where it is. Okay, the question kind of comes back to the labor force participation rate. And the two things that are happening with labor force participation right now is a lot of women are kind of sitting on the sideline. I shouldn't say a lot, I say some women are sitting on the sideline because of childcare issues. Childcare is still predominantly a woman's, the mother's issue, okay? Not always. You know how many stay-at-home dads are in my neighborhood? There are a lot of stay-at-home dads in my neighborhood. But then again, I'm on the west side by the campus. So that's one thing. The other thing is guess what's happening to the baby boomers? I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers. And during COVID, my wife and I were both thinking, maybe it's time to retire. Maybe it's time. We decided not to. We like our work too much. But there's a lot of folks that are baby boomers that are coming out of COVID and saying, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. Okay, so there's this huge kind of bubble of the supply force, the baby boomers, that are basically now actually removing themselves from the labor force. Now, how many of them will come back? We'll always find when you look at the labor force participation rate, you see that across age, you see people hit that 65 and they kind of drop out. And then guess what happens? They tend to come back in. Why do they come back in? 67, 66, 67, they come back into the labor force. Why is that? They're bored out of their minds. They want to work. Some have to because they need the money, but a lot of it is because they're bored out of their minds. They want to work. So maybe this current kind of baby boomers leaving the labor market right now, maybe this is just a blip as a fallout of COVID. Okay? I've shared this with you before, and I'll share it again because I think this really drives home, I think what's happening, is that this is a simple population to employment ratio for the US, Wisconsin, and the Great Lakes. And it goes back all the way to 1969, and it goes up to 2021. This is simply the total population divided by the total number of jobs, okay? And notice that over time, we've been generating a lot more jobs than we've been generating people to fill those jobs. Now, during the 70s and the 80s, we were able to sustain this because that was the period when women started entering the labor force en masse, okay? So we were able to sustain that. But guess what? Over the last 10 years, we've kind of tapped that pool of labor out. As we continue to generate more and more jobs, where are the people going to come from to fill those jobs? So this labor shortage issue that we're facing right now, this is a long-term problem that's been coming down the road for a number of years, okay? Now, if I adjusted this and looked at the working age population and not total population, it would look even worse, okay? So the thing is that if we're generating more jobs than we are people, that means that there's either, three things are going to happen. One is businesses are going to turn towards automation, okay? And I'm sure you've all seen that. When you go to the grocery store, you use the self-checkout. They've implemented that because they can't hire enough cashiers, okay? Businesses are going to start moving towards automation. Second is, I forgot. We have to. How do we increase the birth rate? Okay. How do we do that? Yeah. Well, good luck with that. Even if we implemented policies to increase the birth rate, and I have no clue how we would do that, we would still have this problem for the next 15, 20 years. So that's not going to work. The other thing is that we got to talk about immigration policy. We have to talk about immigration policy. The economy needs those workers. But unfortunately, immigration policy right now is kind of a political firestorm, which is a shame because we have to do it. Okay? Housing prices. This is a long-term trend going back to 1975. You can see that the housing market is relatively stable except for two time periods. One was the housing bubble of the mid-2000s that led to the Great Recession. The housing bubble popped. The housing bubble itself did not cause the Great Recession. The popping of the housing bubble actually created stress in the financial markets, and it was the collapse of the financial markets that caused the Great Recession. We can see the recovery. Wisconsin didn't experience quite as big of a bubble, so when it popped, it didn't hit quite as hard. There were some places, some states that were just, hit really hard by that. You can see the recovery, but what's of concern is the past couple of years is this real spike in housing prices. Okay, and this is having ramifications throughout. This is one of the issues that Sauk Prairie's been working on for a number of years now, is housing, and particularly affordable housing, or I prefer the term starter homes. Okay, and one of the things that's spilling over here now, and it's affecting in the inflation rate, is that more and more people are kind of being shoved out of the buying, the ownership of a home market, so they're going into the rental market. And what's that doing? That's putting upward pressure on rental prices. Okay? We haven't really seen that. We've seen a little bit of that in Wisconsin, but not to the extent that it's been occurring in other places. Okay? So that is not helping with the inflation issue. So let's look at inflation. This is the Consumer Price Index going all the way back to 1957. And this is kind of, you can see flat, you can see, how many of you remember stagflation, whip inflation now, all that from the late 70s, early 80s? Remember? Yes, we're revealing our age if we remember that stuff, right? A lot of people think that now is really difficult, and you got to go back and look at that time period. That time period was, I mean, the sky really was falling. But look at what's happening to inflation over the past year or so. That last time period there, it's really jumped up. And it's that jumping up of the inflation rate that is causing a lot of the headaches right now. Okay, let's look at this a little bit more recently. Oh, that's just another way of looking at it. The other thing, notice here that I've got two up here. I've got the consumer price index for all items and then one that less food and energy. Okay, we hear about that a lot because if you include food and energy, you get a lot more instability in the consumer price index. And that's because the food industry, the food markets and the energy markets by definition are more unstable. They bounce around a lot more, okay? For example, so that bouncing around can kind of paint a distorted picture of what's really happening, okay? So what's getting a lot of headlines right now? Eggs, right? Matter of fact, I got to go back and I'm going to do an interview with a television station about egg prices. Why are we so obsessed over egg prices? Because it's skyrocketing. If it bleeds, it leads. Why are egg prices going through the roof right now? There's a bird flu that is killing off all the laying hens. It's just supply and demand, okay? Once we get through that and we can rebuild the stock, the price of eggs will come back down again. But yet, eggs are running the headlines. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. Okay, this is more recently, this is looking over the past couple of years. This gives you an idea of kind of what's happening more recently, is that you can see that there is a relatively rapid growth in consumer price index. If you include food and energy, which is the difference between the two there, you can see that food and energy is driving a lot of the inflation right now. Energy prices, food prices, that's driving it. Still, even if you take those two things out, it's still too high. But notice what's happened to energy and food prices over the last couple of months. It's stabilized, it's flattened out. But what's driving the rest of it, okay? The way the consumer price index is structured is that it's a basket of goods. And the weights that they put on each one of those baskets of goods is reflected by how much money you spend. So what's one of the biggest items that you spend money on? Housing. So if housing prices are spiking up and rental prices are spiking up, that's what's driving a lot of that, okay? So between food prices, energy prices, and housing prices, that's explaining a lot of what's happening there, okay? This is a percent change. Again, you can kind of see that it's actually starting to trend downward just ever so slightly. But we have consumer price indexes for just about everything you could think of, okay? This is looking at fuel oil, another fuel. Fuel oil, we don't use fuel oil in the Midwest that much, but if you get up into New England, it's all fuel oil. You can see the spike there. When did that spike occur? That huge drop, that huge drive up. What caused that? Ukraine, Russia invading Ukraine. That's what drove that. So Russia's policy actions in Ukraine is affecting us in our pocketbooks, okay? Notice it's stabilized. There was shock to the energy market, and in a sense kind of stabilized a little bit, okay? We also got, the other one that I found was really interesting is the red one, pet food. Look at what's happening to pet food. If you start looking at about May of last year, look at the red line. It's inching up. Why is pet food becoming more expensive? is made with grains. All right? What's happening to the grain market? It's exploding. Why is the grain market exploding? Ukraine. I don't think people realize how much grain comes out of Ukraine. A lot. Okay? The other one I have this going back farther, is the blue one, computer peripheral. The only thing that is trending downward consistency is things like computers and stuff like that. It's getting cheaper over time. That's the change. You can see the fuel prices jumping around. Taking that out, you can kind of see, sake of time, let's keep going. So what's happening? What are the summaries that we've got here? COVID impacting the economy. It was like a light switch. The problem is the economy is not built that way. We can shut it down, but it's harder to turn it back on. Why? Because all sorts of supply chain problems start to pop up. Okay? The federal stimulus did starve off a deep recession. We had every opportunity or every chance of going into a really deep recession. We didn't because of the federal stimulus. Inflation is eating away at money-based measures of the economy. Okay, yeah, I'm getting a pay raise, but inflation is greater than the pay raise I'm getting. Okay, I'm falling behind. So what's driving this? Federal stimulus. Was it too much? A lot of folks, you hear a lot of the arguments that, yeah, it's the federal stimulus money. That's what is driving inflation. It was all those policies that we're paying the price for. The problem with that argument, though, is that inflation is a global phenomenon. If it was purely fiscal stimulus policy being too aggressive, then inflation would only be affecting us. But it's a global phenomenon. So it can't be just federal stimulus. Was it a little too much, a little too long? Maybe. But that's not what's causing inflation. Okay? Supply chain bubbles. Okay, that example of furniture. Okay, supply chain bubbles are is where you get, particularly when you get that surge in consumer expenditures coming out of COVID. You got people wanting to spend money, but the supply chain problems are creating shortages. So what happens when you have surging demand and shortages on supply? Prices go up, inflation. Okay? The ultimate supply chain bubble, any of you don't have to raise your hand, own BMWs? Drive a BMW? Guess where BMW gets all of their wiring harnesses made? Ukraine. Guess which one of the first factories that Russia bombed? So the entire production line for BMW basically shut down for months because they couldn't get the wiring harnesses. Talk about a bubble in your supply chain. That's a gaping hole in your supply chain. Okay? Pent-up consumer demand coupled with supply chain problems. That's what's causing inflation. The Ukrainian war is wreaking havoc in energy and food prices. Starting to stabilize. Okay? The labor shortage is putting a cap on job growth. I think it is. Okay? But this is not a new issue. It's been around for a long time. And it's just kind of coming front and center because people, as we came out of COVID, people are rethinking their work-life balance. They're rethinking, this notion of remote work. A lot of women are rethinking, because of childcare problems. So there's some unique things that are coming out because of COVID, but this is not a new phenomenon. Okay? Now, what about the future? I want to share two things with you. One is a set of leading economic indicators that actually has done a pretty good job. This is from the Confidence Board. And what they do is they have a set of leading economic indicators that they track on a month-to-month basis. And what this is a percent change from one month to the next month in that kind of comprehensive index. And you can see that it actually does a pretty good job of forecasting recessions. You can see that the recession of the early 2000s, it went negative. Guess what? We went into a recession. There was a little period there in 2002 where it's like, ooh, kind of mixed signals, but we came out. Then you can see 2008, there were indicators that we were going to go into a recession. We did. And then we had a couple of periods there where it's like, ooh, maybe, but we didn't. COVID is unique. Okay, there were some indicators that the economy was going to go into a slowdown independent of COVID, but COVID drove it over the edge. But what's more interesting in what's happening now? The most recent time period, we have sustained number of months where the indicator has been going down. Indeed, for the last several months, it has been going down. This is one of the indicators that a lot of economists are looking at and saying, it looks like we're going into a recession, okay? Now, what goes into these? What are the different kind of measures that go into this? Average weekly hours in manufacturing, initial claims for unemployment insurance, manufacturing and new orders. Notice manufacturing in here a lot. Okay? Manufacturing really traces the economic cycles quite well. Manufacturing is pretty unstable. Okay? Building permits for new private housing units. So there's a bunch of these different indicators here. So what I wanted to do was to kind of show you how each one of these have changed a month-over-month basis going back that number of months. What is that? That's 6 months? There are some, if it's negative, that's kind of, bad. The economy's not going in the right direction. If they're positive, they tend to be good, okay, except for the average. The problem, though, here is that some of these, they go negative for 2 months, then they go positive. Then they go negative for a month, then they go positive, okay? When you add all the indicators up, all those individual elements up, in total, they're going down, which is where we're saying, maybe we're going into recession. But there's a lot of noise in that, and that's why there's perhaps more confusion than insights, okay? But if you're a betting person, based on that, you would bet we're heading into a recession, okay? This is one indicator that I like to watch. This is the yield curve. This is the difference between long-term interest rates and short-term interest rates. The economics tells you that long-term interest rates should always be higher than short-term interest rates. And if you think about what goes into in determining the interest rate, you can kind of see here. That's that last line there. Expected inflation, risk of default, and normal profit. The interest rate is set by what's a normal profit? Why should I loan you money? What do I get out of it? Well, I get out of it a normal profit. Okay, what is that normal profit? Why would a bank loan you money? They're profit maximizing, unless you're a credit union. Okay, they operate under a different set of rules. Okay, what's the normal profit for? That's okay. Good. Expected inflation, okay? You would think that if I'm taking out a loan today and I'm paying it back tomorrow, the effect of inflation over a very short period of time should be relatively small. But if I'm paying it back in 10 years, inflation is going to eat away more at that. So inflation over the long term should be higher. So that should raise up interest rates. Risk of default, okay? This is where your credit rating comes into play. Over time, a longer period of time, the risk of defaulting, regardless of what your credit rating is, goes up because more things can happen, like Russia invading Ukraine. So all of these things say that long-term interest rates should be higher than short-term interest rates. But notice there's a couple, and for most time periods, that is the case. Okay, that difference is above zero. But notice the time periods where it actually drops below. The shaded bars on the recessions aren't perfectly clear, but you can see that every time the yield curve flips, to a certain extent, for an extended period of time, we have tended to go into a recession. So look at the most recent time period. Okay? That one indicator there, where the red arrow's at, that is pointing towards we're heading into a recession. Okay? That's the one that I tend to keep an eye on. Okay? Now, the Wall Street Journal. Every year I share with you the results of the Wall Street Journal. I've got monthly up there. They have dropped. They don't do monthly anymore. They do quarterly. And they do, in this particular survey, they did 68 individuals, organizations, and universities. And what I want to share with you is kind of the results of that survey. Now, this survey came out last Monday, so it's hot off the presses. Okay? What's going to happen to GDP? What I've done here is I computed an average across all of those economists that are making that forecast. The research suggests that that average tends to be pretty accurate. And then I computed the standard deviation, and I added a standard deviation, that's the bar going up, and then I subtracted a standard deviation, that's the bar going down. That kind of gives you an idea of how confident that average is. The tighter that is, the more confidence we have. Notice that as we go out further into time, it gets a little bit wider. That's because it's more difficult to predict as you go further out into the future, because more stuff can happen, okay? But every indicator here is saying that we're not in a recession now. The first quarter of 2003, we're probably not going to be in a recession, but when we get into the summer and fall months, guess what? We'll probably be in a recession. But notice, that's a pretty mild recession. That is less than 0.5% decline in GDP. That is an extremely mild recession. Okay? So the forecast is that we're probably going to go into a mild recession, and then we'll come right back out of it. Okay? What's going to happen to inflation? Inflation is going to start going down. Okay? Inflation rate is going to become, probably a year from now, is going to be close to 2.3%. Is it the 2% that the Fed is, this magic number that the Federal Reserve Bank has? It's probably going to be a little bit above that. Okay? But inflation is expected to come down. Okay? Because markets are going to adjust. Energy prices are going to stabilize and come down a little bit. Food prices are going to stabilize and come down a little bit. And we're starting to see some evidence that rent prices are starting to come down and stabilize a little bit. Okay, the unemployment rate, well, if we go into a recession, the unemployment rate is going to go up. It's going to go up to maybe 4.5%, maybe 5%. But then we're going to start coming back down again. A recession with 4.7% unemployment is a pretty mild recession. Okay? So the consensus is mild slowdown, mild recession, limited unemployment, inflation starting to come down. What's going to happen to interest rates? Here, there's a lot of uncertainty because we don't know what the Federal Reserve is going to do. But we think that the interest rates are going to start slowly inching their way down. Why? Because, well, when you go into recession, interest rates tend to slow down a little bit. The other thing is inflation is expected to come down. So if inflation is coming down, interest rates should be coming down. Okay? So if you're thinking of refinancing your house, don't do it now. Wait. Sorry, Steve. Just took away some of your business. Wait. Okay? You're thinking of buying a new car? Wait, because interest rates are going to start coming down. Now, that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if everybody thinks the exact same way and thinks, I'm not going to buy that new car, I'm not going to buy that new furniture, because I think if everybody does that and demand starts to back off, what happens? We go into a recession. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay? They also asked a couple of questions. Will the Federal Reserve be able to achieve a soft landing for the economy in 2023, lowering inflation while avoiding a recession? 3/4 say nope. They're going to overdo it and we're going to go into a recession. It's going to be a mild recession, but they're going to overdo it. They're going to be too aggressive. Okay? About 1/4 think, no, the Fed's going to get it just about right. Okay? Which one of the following sectors in 2023 will prove hardest to tame in terms of inflation? Notice gasoline is not very high because the energy markets have stabilized and they're actually starting to come down a little bit. Airfares. Well, a big driver of airfare is jet fuel prices. That's going to start coming down. Household energy, not that bad. Look at one of the bottom two. Rent. Okay, that's because of that housing market situation, people going into the rental markets. And healthcare. Healthcare inflation has always been an issue and it will continue to be an issue. The Fed has indicated that it plans to continue raising interest rates this year. When do you expect the Federal Reserve to reverse course and to make next rates cuts? They're probably saying it's going to be the end of this year, if not into next year. So the idea is that the Fed is going to continue to raise interest rates slowly to bring inflation down. Those raises are going to be smaller and smaller. Then they're probably going to stop raising, and then they'll start to tweak the interest rates down again. They're going to start tweaking it down probably the end of this year, beginning of next year. Okay? What is the probability that we're going to go into a recession in the next 12 months? 60%, depending on which statistical average you take, an average, a median, or a mode, you're looking at 60 to 65% probability that we're going to go into a recession. Okay? More than a 50-50 chance, 79% of the responding economists said, yeah, we're going to go into a recession. Okay? So all the indicators are, yeah, we probably are going to go into a mild recession. So what's the state? Bottom line, the economy will slow down. And if we do enter a recession, it's going to be a mild one. Short-term economic issues, inflation, rising interest rates. The wild card is the European economy. Okay? There was concern that their heavy dependence upon Russian energy and the Ukrainian war was going to drive Europe into a recession. And if Europe goes into a deep recession, they will probably drag us into a recession as well. That fear appears to be alleviating a little bit. It looks as though Europe was able to wean itself off of Russian energy much quicker than they had thought. Okay? But that's still the wild card. Some people think China's a wild card. I don't know about that. Long-term issue is sustained labor shortages. This problem is not going to go away. This is why I think a lot of firms are looking increasingly at automation. Okay, why are dairy farmers using robotic milking machines? Not because they're fans of science fiction, it's because they can't find labor. They can't find labor that they can afford to pay. Okay, so we're going to see more and more and more adoption of technologies. Okay, and I'll stop with that and see if there's any questions. There's been no questions. Questions, comments, complaints? Not that much. Not that much. Wisconsin has always been kind of a net loser. I don't think Matt here is a colleague of mine who he presented last year at the conference, if you remember Matt. He did some work looking at the brain drain. And what it is that the number of people moving out of Wisconsin is about what you would expect given national averages. Okay, what we lack is people moving in. Why aren't people moving into Wisconsin? Okay? We could talk all day about that, preferably over beers where I'm not being recorded. Okay? People say it's the weather. Well, I think Minnesota proves that wrong. Okay? So, yeah, but I think that's one of those kind of gotcha headlines. It's something that we need to be concerned about, and I think that the placemaking work that Prairie du Sac has been moving forward on trying to make this a really cool place to live. I think as more communities embrace that, I think we're going to start to see more people looking at Wisconsin as a potential place to live. It's really kind of cool. Now, one of the things that Matt and I have been really trying to work on is this notion of remote work. Okay? I got a job in Chicago. I'm sick of the congestion. I'm sick of the traffic, right? I want to move into a nice little community, maybe a boomeranger. Maybe I grew up here and I want to come back, okay? We're having a really hard time modeling that because it's just, the data it's just really, really messy, okay? Because we're so used to thinking people live here, they work there. It's a spatial world. Well, now they live here and their work is, well, is their work over there or is their work here? It's just every time we think we start to make progress on it, we take 2 steps backwards. So it's a real, it has the potential, but we don't have the research to base that on. Yes. Why is that? They have an 800-pound gorilla called the Twin Cities. What do we have? We're being recorded, I'm not going to say. Okay? The engines of economic growth in Wisconsin are the smaller urban areas, like the Madisons, the Appletons. Those are not big enough to pull the whole state up. Okay? So it's just kind of the dynamics of where our engines of economic growth are. Now, because Madison is a major engine of economic growth, Prairie du Sac is sitting in the catbird seat because you're within commuting distance. Now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Any other questions?
So early on in your presentation, you said you implied that inflation is worse in Wisconsin than, oh, thank you. You implied that inflation is worse in Wisconsin than nationwide, looking at the spread between the nominal and the real GDP as well as the personal income. I'm just wondering why you think that is.
No, I don't mean to say that inflation is worse here. Our income growth is not as strong as it could be. Okay? So you look at the growth of the nation, you've got a couple of places, states that are just growing in leaps and bounds. And we're not, and that's pulling the whole U.S. up. We're not at that level. When you look at growth rates in Wisconsin, we tend to be in the middle of the pack. The problem is that the spread is getting wider, okay? So it's not that inflation is worse in Wisconsin. I wish we had the data. We don't have the data. Our rate of growth in nominal terms is not as strong.
How much has the Russia-Ukraine war affected kind of our agriculture and more so either purchasing products and
a lot.
And would that be reflected in our lack of growth potentially?
Yes. Ukraine produces a lot of grain, and you could see that affecting pet food prices. Well, that's also affecting animal feed prices. So you're seeing animal feed, dairy farmers looking at their feed costs going through the roof. The reason is because of Ukraine, okay? But on the other hand, grain farmers are in a position to actually come out ahead. The problem is we're not in planting season right now. And most grain farmers have already sold or they've contracted out. So the timing is such that grain farmers can't take advantage of it right now. Now, when they start to enter into the markets and do that forward contracting, which they're starting to look at right now, will grain prices start to come back down a little bit? Okay, so it's the dairy farmers and the beef farmers and the hog farmers and the chicken farmers, well, the ones that still have chickens, are facing increasing costs now. Grain farmers are not going to be able to benefit until in the near future. Now, what's going to happen to prices in the near future?
Could you address how shrinkflation impacts the CPI? So when they look at that calculation, say with food, you can look at the same box of cereal, but it's got 25% less.
Oh, yes.
So how does the CPI address that?
It doesn't address that at all. It doesn't. What shrinkflation is, it's a new term that's starting to get attention, is that when inflation rates were really, really low for a really long historic period of time, right? Companies were really hesitant to raise prices. So what did they do? They shrunk the size of the product and kept the price the same. So now when you go and buy a bag of coffee, it's not 12 ounces of coffee, it's 11 ounces of coffee, but it's the same price. Okay? That was being done kind of under the radar. Now, is that a form of inflation? Not technically, but it plays out the same way. Okay? And I think now companies are able to kind of say, ooh, inflation is high, we can raise our prices now, we can catch up to where we were. Now, are companies gouging? Time will tell. Thank you.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. We always appreciate your time. As we close today, I just want to thank again our area administrators for the work that they do, thinking out of the box, taking risk, and just being creative. I promise I did not pay Dr. Deller to give the promo for childcare on it becoming a public issue. But I ask that you pay attention over the next several weeks. In February, we will be going before our school board, sharing our work, asking for a green light to keep exploring the child care shortage issue and how we can, out of the box and creatively address that locally. So pay attention to that. There will be more videos you'll see around. But before we leave, if you have any questions about local projects, investments, we do have our administrators here, and they too will answer any questions you may have. Someone give them a really, really hard question. Last question I will ask then of you, Dr. Deller. What can communities our size, as we see rent prices may soften as an indicator of housing prices, what can we be thinking about doing proactively differently to try to entice developers to partner with us on some of those workforce housing needs?
I think one of the things you have to do is look at the existing housing stock. And I think you have to look at the quality of the existing housing stock. We're always looking at adding new. But one of the things is that, as you drive around town, there are rental properties that probably could use a little tender loving care. This is something a lot of rural communities are struggling with. They're saying that they're coming to the housing issue through labor shortages. Why are people moving into town to take these jobs? Well, one, they're not very good paying jobs. Second is we got a labor shortage. But third is housing. It's either too expensive or it's really crappy, okay? I think too much attention is focused on the new housing and not on what do we do with the subpar housing that we already have. Now, in a lot of, this is a challenge because Wisconsin state statute really favors the landlord. Okay, so it's really difficult for municipalities to do something. That I appreciate and I understand that. But when other communities come back and go, oh, well, that's private property, we can't do anything on that, well, then stop complaining about having crappy housing. Okay, so I think maybe shift a little bit, but it's going to take some political capital to essentially say, okay, that I'm going to use the term slumlords, what are you going to do to clean this place up and charge reasonable rents? And the state has not made that easy.
Well, again, on behalf of the Bank of Prairie du Sac, the Sauk Prairie Area Chamber of Commerce, our villages, townships, and school partners, we thank you for coming out this morning. Administrators will be down here if you have specific questions you would like to ask. I encourage you to stay involved, pay attention to what's happening in local government and our needs, attend various events where your voice can be heard. As the video said, complete those surveys. That is how we get started on identifying needs, understanding what your workers' needs are, so that we can develop programs and services that help support them. Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you coming. Make it a great day.
Don't wanna